Good morning and welcome to our final show before the summer break. Since the election, we've spoken to most of the key Tory politicians, but that momentous day in May has also transformed the opposition. Labour at war, the Scottish nationalists stronger than at any time in their history. Today we have two insurgents who are challenging the old laws of politics. Jeremy Corbyn's storming campaign to become Labour leader is turning that party upside down. He's all over this morning's front pages, but what exactly does he believe and how different would Corbyn's Labour, indeed Corbyn's Britain, actually be? I've also been talking to Salmond of the SNP, a man who says today that he could do business with Jeremy Corbyn. He's been talking about tax, opposition and what he says is now an inevitable second referendum on Scotland's independence. Also this morning, as the Prime Minister steps up the battle against Islamist extremism, we hear from Baroness Varsi, Conservative peer and former Cabinet Minister. Now, despite the holiday season, there is still plenty of red meat in the papers today to occupy our reviewers. Sarah Smith, who keeps a keen eye on politics for BBC Scotland, and Sarah Sands, editor of the London Evening Standard. Plus some drama and music, of course.
Another case cracked. How very public-spirited. That's never really your motivation, is it?
Sherlock's big brother, the actor and writer Mark Gatiss, joins me in the studio, and incomparable Gershwin from the Young Musician of the Year, Martin James Bartlett. A packed programme. Let's go straight to the news with Sian Lloyd. Now, as ever, to the front pages, the Sunday Times, their hard-left plot to infiltrate the Labour race, communists and militants and so forth, alleged to be joining up to back my guest, Jeremy Corbyn. Lots of pictures of Chris Froome. We're all waiting for the moment. Again, on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, there he is. And their main story is Cameron takes the fight to ISIL, or Islamic State, so-called. Big pressure on ISIL in Syria, it suggests. And again, a very, very interesting, if true, story in the Independent Sunday, I'm sure it is. EU referendum within a year, it says, is going to be brought forward to next year, not 2017, it says. And again, the bicycle race, the Tour de France, final stages. Finally, Scotland on Sunday. Summer haggis, very interesting story there about haggis in the summer, very important. But also, of course, the big sports story, Scotland and England will be playing each other in the first stages of the World Cup. Much excitement on both sides about that. Observer, a big U-turn on social care. It was in the manifesto. It's being pulled by Jeremy Hunt, according to the paper. And finally, The Sun on Sunday. You remember the days when the News of the World had peers and MPs and all sorts of celebrities quaking in their shoes every Sunday? Well, plus ça change, Lord Coke, Tory peers drug binges with £200 prostitutes. To discuss that in great detail, Sarah Sands and Sarah Smith. Welcome to you both, Sarahs. We're going to start off, however, I think with the politics, are we, Sarah?
Yes, and with the Labour leadership. All the papers have got stories.
I'm going to have to address you by your second name, Smith, I'll call you, for the avoidance of doubt. Smith, take us away.
The Sunday Mirror have summed it up. It's as easy as ABC. Labour grandees all saying anyone but Corbyn for the leadership. And the papers have lots of stories about this, saying that if Corbyn wins, the party aren't just worried that he might be unelectable to the rest of the country, but that there might be a split within the Labour Party, an SDP-style split. Talk that there is plotting already going on for a coup to remove him from the leadership within 6 months of him being elected to it if he got it. 8 shadow cabinet members now have all come out and said they wouldn't serve in a Corbyn shadow cabinet. Although if you thought that the rest of the candidates would be uniting together against this, it's getting very bitter and very personal between the other 3 as well.
Liz Kendall has been told she should stand aside, hasn't she? She did absolutely not, under no circumstances.
She is not a quitter. She is not about to stand aside and allow one of the Yvette Cooper or Andy Burnham to take it. But there's accusations that Yvette Cooper and Liz Kendall are being talked down because they're women, that some of the grandees don't think the woman's up to leading the party, that Liz Kendall gets criticised for not being a mother, for not having children, that making her unsuitable. It's all getting rather nasty between them.
It does nothing but good for Corbyn, as far as I can see, that the Observer describing him as a rock star, social media on fire, Corbyn mania.
And so, lots of young supporters.
Lots of young supporters.
I tell you what, if he does it, and a big if, but if he does do it, the Labour Party conference this autumn is going to be one of the highlights of all of our political careers. It's going to be fantastic.
Yes, for entertainment. No, I mean, and the word that keeps getting used is authenticity, isn't it? So somehow it doesn't matter if he's catastrophic, you know, he's authentic.
Well, because the poll that put him ahead this week, I mean, interesting that people are trying to pull this race at all after unsuccessfully polling the general election. And so if we can rely on it, but 27% of the people voting for him said they weren't interested in somebody who could win an election. That wasn't the reason why they were voting for him.
It does occasionally strike me that after the election, everyone has got what they wanted, virtually. Yeah. The Tories, the right, like to run the country, and that's what they're doing, and the left likes to be in furious opposition, and they've got that too.
They have.
Everybody's content. But the hard left...
Yes, the front page of the Sunday Times, they say that over 140,000 new members have signed up to vote in this leadership race, and a lot of them are not really traditional Labour supporters, that they're members of the Communist Party, supporters of the Greens, entryism of some kind. I mean, it does take us back to the 1980s in the history of the Labour Party discussion of that kind. And so there is one MP saying that Harriet Harman, the acting leader, should halt the leadership vote because there are too many people who aren't real Labour supporters.
In your judgment, Sarah, is there the slightest chance of that happening?
No, of course not. No, it's absolutely not. And of course, comparisons between Jeremy Corbyn and Michael Foot are frequently made, and they are here again in the Sunday Times, comparing some places in which their policies are equal on economics, higher taxes and higher spending, but pointing out actually that Michael Foot in some ways, I mean, had a record in government. He had been a cabinet minister, he was used to doing deals and making compromises, and that he wouldn't speak to the IRA.
As the way Tony Benn is it?
He was a highly intellectual, thoughtful man, Michael Foot, despite the duffel coat and all of that. Now then, the other story, Sarah, that I was mentioning, the other political story, is bringing forward the referendum over to what's going on in the Tory party side. This is really interesting.
It's really interesting.
And Neil, and that's why we were so incredibly disappointed when the Labour Party sat in their hands as opposed to joining with us and 6 other political parties in opposing that welfare bill when it came before the House of Commons.
You mentioned the Labour Party. Given what the SNP has been saying about austerity and so forth, is it absolutely the case that Jeremy Corbyn would be your ideal leader of the Labour Party, the person that you could do business with?
Well, I've tried not to try and pick the leader of another political party. I mean, that's for the members and supporters of that political party to do. Therefore, I've expressed no preference as to who the Labour leader will be. I've merely said that, well, firstly, I think that Jerry Corbyn's a serious politician. I think this, treatment of him, this demonisation, I'm quite familiar with it, incidentally. That demonisation in the metropolitan press gives no idea as to, the substance that he has in terms of his... I mean, I've known him for many years. And that doesn't mean I agree with him on anything, incidentally. It just means he's a substantial politician. The one advantage with Jeremy Corbyn is that you would know where he stood on certain issues. I mean, you know absolutely that you could cooperate as an opposition against the welfare bill. I would know absolutely that when the Trident renewal vote, the proposal to waste £100 billion on a new generation of nuclear weapons comes up, you'd know exactly you had a means of cooperation. One of the reasons why
he would allow more effective opposition in the House of Commons, in your view?
For the same reason that he's having such success within the Labour Party, that whether people agree or disagree with him, at least you're absolutely certain of where he stands in the direction of leadership. That doesn't mean I agree with Jeremy Corbyn's politics across a range of things, but you're asking a question, would it be possible to cooperate? And in terms of that question, the answer is yes.
And the Labour Party seems to have gone to war with itself over the choice of its next leader. The surprise success in the race of the left-winger Jeremy Corbyn is causing major jitters in the other camps. And this morning's paper suggests all sorts of non-Labour people are flocking to back him. The Communist Party says that it's about transforming Labour from a bourgeois workers' party that serves capitalism into a workers' party that serves the working class to the cause of socialism. Mr. Corbyn is with me. Good morning. Would you agree with that quote? Is that what the campaign is really about?
What it's about is converting the Labour Party into much more of a social movement, and an awful lot of people have joined the party since the election. We've now got 250,000 members, probably 50,000 signed up as supporters. They all want to do something. They want to change society.
So do you think the party today has been too much of a bourgeois party?
It's been too close to big business, it's been too close to economic orthodoxy, it's been incapable of offering Labour voters and the majority of the electorate a real alternative, and that was the fundamental problem in the last general election.
Let's talk a little bit about what kind of changes we might see from a Corbyn Labour Party. I think you've said that the top rate of tax might not go up as high as 70p, but how far should it go up?
Well, I think we should keep the 50 pence rate, but I think it's more important to look at spending on the basis of tax income by not reducing corporation tax. Indeed, I would increase it slightly to pay for student fees, but also closing down the massive numbers of tax loopholes, tax havens, and tax evasion by a lot of companies. Companies that claim to be trading in Britain, but in reality place their headquarters in Switzerland and pay Swiss corporation tax, for example. There's a lot of areas to do things, so it's not all about income tax.
What about some kind of wealth tax?
Well, a wealth tax on massive incomes that are made, sort of windfall tax, as was done by Labour in 1997, is a prospect worth doing. But the reality is, it's not just about taxing, it's also about increasing the economy, therefore you increase tax income. So one of my suggestions is a national investment bank which will improve infrastructure and at the same time improve investment in manufacturing industry, particularly small scale and medium range manufacturing industry. We've missed a trick in Britain. We're good at inventing things, bad at developing things.
Let's look at the macro picture, if we may, for a moment. £1.5 trillion of national debt, still 80% of GDP and so forth. Despite all the austerity, we still have a massive, massive debt problem. Is that not a real serious problem overhanging all of politics in this country, something you just can't walk away from?
But the austerity process makes it worse because it lowers income, lowers wages, lowers income tax, increases demand on welfare because of the levels of poverty in Britain. And so it actually is a cycle of decline. Surely it's better to invest in an economy, to grow income and grow prosperity.
Sure, but to do what you want to do, you either have to sharply raise taxes to blunt the edge of what is now called austerity, or else you have to raise borrowing. And it still seems to a lot of people that raising borrowing just at the moment is too big a risk.
You're looking at £50 billion of uncollected tax. You're looking at massive evasion of tax. You're looking at an awful lot of strange money that comes in, particularly to London and the South East, that's invested in land banking and empty luxury homes. I think there are some areas there when we could bring in a lot of money through taxation income. But the issue has to be what kind of society we want to live in and what role of government is in achieving that.
What about the role of the state? Because in our lifetimes, as it were, the state in Britain has moved back massively from what it used to do, and a lot big sections of the economy has just pulled back entirely through privatisation. Do you think the time is ripe for nationalisation, both of the railways but also of other things too?
The role of the state, of government, of the community is surely to provide people with some security in their lives, to provide them with a decent health service, free at the point of use, provide them with a welfare state that stops people falling into destitution. We are not doing that. We're making it worse. But also, where there are natural
utilities,
where there are natural monopolies like Royal Mail, like the railways, it seems to me counterintuitive that we spend a great deal of money on investing in railway infrastructure, billions, and we then hand it over to train operating companies to run it. I think it is much better if we bring the railway system as a whole into public ownership. It's not some extreme position. It's supported on opinion polls by 60 to 70% of the electorate.
Does the same not automatically and logically apply to, for instance, the power industry?
Well, I think the idea that you can run a fair market in the energy supply system is a little odd. Your house and my house have one feeder cable going in for our electricity, one gas pipe going in for our gas supply, one telephone line for our telephone system. There's no competition there. There is a creation of a false market. I would be much happier if we had a regulated, publicly run service delivering energy supplies.
So renationalise energy, gas,
you can call it renationalise,
water.
you can call it public ownership, you can call it a better form of control of those industries, but at the moment, there's a great deal of money being made out of all of us by gas and electricity companies who are benefiting from the infrastructure investment that you and I, as taxpayers, have put in over the past 50 years.
So public ownership of the big monopolies would still be a Jeremy Corbyn position.
Of those,
Which reminds me slightly of the old days of Tony Benn, the alternative economic strategy and all of that. If I'd asked Tony Benn what his politics were and asked him about Marx, I think what he would have said is Marx was right about a lot of the economics and wrong on the politics. politics, and his politics came from the English radical tradition, the Levellers and so forth. Is that by and large where you come from too?
Well, Marx obviously analysed what was happening in a quite brilliant way, and the philosophy around Marx is absolutely fascinating. Does it all apply now? Well, obviously, philosophy applies at all times. Do we then take that as a way in which we ensure that people have reasonable security in their lives through public ownership of the major monopolies? Then I think that is a fair point to look at. It's not unpopular with the public. We are, after all, subsidising the railway system to a massive degree. The nuclear power industry expects us to pay for their clean-up costs when they decommission nuclear power stations. The water industry are constantly sniping around wanting support for new infrastructure projects. If we're investing in infrastructure, then we, the public, should get the benefit of it.
Do you regard yourself as a Marxist?
That's a very interesting question, actually. I haven't thought about that
Thank
for
you.
a long time. I haven't really read as much of Marx as I should have done. I've read quite a bit, but not that much. And I think Marx's transition of history and the analysis of how you go from feudalism to capitalism and move on to a different stage is fascinating. So we all owe something to it. Probably inside you, even you do.
Well, I
You think
remember
you do?
Francis Wheen said we should regard Marx as a great Victorian novelist, a great observer of the scene, and I think I would probably go along with
Well, he was an observer rather than a doer, although towards the end of his life his family got quite involved in doing things. But he was essentially a fascinating figure who observed a great deal and from whom we can learn a great deal.
The politics of revolutionary parties, however, were catastrophic, weren't they?
Well, I'm not talking about the Labour Party being a revolutionary party. It certainly isn't. And what we're doing here is putting forward a view that the Labour Party has to offer a credible alternative, that it's true to the roots of the Labour Party. The roots of the Labour Party are essentially democratic, essentially socialist, essentially community. What we were offering for the past 5-10 years has been essentially austerity light, essentially cuts. Look, if Labour had won in May, and I wish we had won in May, we'd now be making cuts in local government expenditure. That would intensify the adult social care crisis. That isn't right.
There is a very sort of fundamental critique of your position by all the other candidates, by a lot of commentators, which simply says, hold on a minute, Ed Miliband was, in relative terms, to the left on the party, and he was overwhelmingly rejected across England. The Labour Party was seen as a welfarist party, not as a party for people who earned money, not as a party for small business people or entrepreneurs, and therefore the proposition by Jeremy Corbyn that to win in England you have to move further to the left is bonkers.
Well, it's a rather unfortunate use of words, actually. I think people should engage in a serious debate rather than those kind of words, but let's leave that on one side. I'm suggesting that we invest a great deal more in manufacturing industry, in high-tech industry, in developing those medium-sized enterprises which can produce that. I'm also suggesting that in the last election, 34% of the electorate didn't vote, that whilst we did put on votes in England, we obviously lost in Scotland and didn't do terribly well in Wales, but there are also a lot of people that ended up voting for UKIP because they couldn't see anything being offered by the major parties. I think it's a couch of despair what they were doing. If we were offering to end austerity, to improve the life chances of young people particularly, because students are leaving university with massive debt and underemployment, if we're offering hope to people, that'd be something. What's interesting about these debates and this campaign is the numbers of young people that have got involved, excited by politics.
On your campaign in particular, what seems to have happened in the election is that the electorate in Scotland moved to the left, the electorate in England moved to the right. Isn't the logic, therefore, that the Labour Party cannot really retain a unity across Scotland and England? The case, as Tristram Hunt was making on that chair not that long ago, for an English Labour Party is now quite strong.
Well, the Labour Party in Scotland was way out of touch with the general ambit of a lot of Scottish public opinion on Trident, on austerity, on housing, on welfare issues. And I think Labour in Scotland is going to grow again. It'll rediscover essentially what its roots are. What the structure of the party is in the future, that's up to a lot of party members and a lot of debate to decide. I don't think leaders should lay down everything, lay down policies or structures. I think the job of a leader is actually to basically form some views, develop some opinions, and encourage the growth of ideas and democracy. We've got 250,000 members. They've all got ideas.
Are you preparing yourself now, mentally and internally, to become leader of the Labour Party?
Well, I'm preparing myself for another month of debates and hustings and meetings and so on. We just finished the 20th hustings yesterday. Yes, of course, I'm thinking ahead of what happens after September the 12th.
And do you think you're going to win?
Making no predictions. I have no idea what the result's going to be, but I do know this campaign has been absolutely fascinating. It's mobilised and excited and enthused a lot of young people. What's there not to like about young people turning up, being excited and involved in politics?
You have been a very eloquent and persistent rebel all your life. As leader of the Labour Party, you're going to face a bloodbath, aren't you?
Well, there are one or two people in the parliamentary Labour Party who were slightly reluctant to put their signature beside my nomination to become the candidate for leader. I'm grateful to them for doing it, actually. I really am, because they've ensured there is a democratic debate in the party. Listen...
But you're in this for real. You want to be leader, you want to be Prime Minister, you're not going to stand down or...
No. Of course we're in this for real, but I would say this. It's the first time the leader of the party has been elected on a one-person, one-vote outside of any parliamentary control except for the gatekeeping of the entry to the election itself. Surely that is something we should be pleased about. And MPs, I'm sure...
Worryingly democratic moment,
Corbyn. Frighteningly democratic, is that what you're telling me?
On the other hand, you do have this extraordinary position. We do know that there are, as it were, entries to the party who are voting for you on the right because they have said so openly. They've paid their £3 fee to vote for you, to support you, because they think it's going to destroy the Labour Party. And on the left, people from the old militant tendency, from the Communist Party coming in from that side. Are you not worried about the number of people who are not real Labour Party folk to their boots who are coming in to support your campaign?
I have said all along, from the very beginning, I only want people to register as Labour supporters if they are genuinely Labour supporters and they intend to stay for the longer course. Personally, I'd prefer it if all those supporters became party members, and maybe we rejig the membership fee in order to make sure we got a larger membership, because surely the idea of joining a party just to vote in a leadership election is a bit limited. We should go a bit further than that.
So you reject, as it were, entryism to support your campaign?
The entryism that I see is lots of young people who are hitherto not very excited by politics coming in for the first time and saying, yeah, we can have a discussion. We can talk about our debts and our housing problems.
Very briefly on Europe. The left-wing anti-austerity party, Syriza, got absolutely clobbered by German bankers and the German financial system. What's your view of Europe now, in or out?
It's not that simple. What I'd say is this. The way that Greece has been treated is creating a humanitarian crisis. All that bailout to Greece has actually gone back to the banks. It hasn't gone to the Greek people. Europe is negotiating transatlantic trade and investment partnership, which it goes through will be devastating for us. I think us, Labour, should be now saying we want workers' protection across Europe, we want a European social chapter, we want opposition to TTIP as part of the negotiations.
That is not the Europe that's on offer in any kind of referendum.
Rather than giving Cameron a free hand to do whatever he wants and then say we're going to support him. I think we've got to be part of the pressure.
Right. Jeremy Corbyn, thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. And now over to Sian for news headlines.
Thank you. The former SNP leader Alex Salmond has told this programme his party would be able to cooperate with Labour under Jeremy Corbyn on a number of issues, including opposition to Trident and austerity. Mr Salmond, who's now an MP at Westminster, also said he believed Scotland was moving towards another referendum on independence.
I think a second independence referendum is inevitable. The question, of course, is not the inevitability, it's the timing, and that is very much in the hands of Nicola Sturgeon.